When a homeless dog passes through a town, he expects harsh treatment from the humans around him. But when he experiences true kindness for the first time from children, he thanks them in the most incredible way. Through the kitchen window, Irina watched over her children as they played outside. They were chasing each other and playing at the edge of the woods, and their excited voices were music to her ears, but suddenly, the kid being chased stopped running and looked at something in the distance with a shocked expression. The older child also paused and stared at the approaching figure and, being the older and wiser one, she knew immediately that they needed their mother. When she heard her baby's voice calling out to her, Irina abandoned what she was doing and ran out the door. She looked at what made her kid suddenly agitated. The figure approaching them belonged to a stray dog that they had taken in and made theirs. Frankly, he belonged to the village since they all took care of him, but he took a special liking to Irina's family and would always visit them. Irina watched in shock as she took in the dog's appearance. Yes, he was a stray and not always properly groomed, but now he looked even worse than normal. Irina noticed immediately that he had a limp and marks all over his body. She gasped, horrified at the appearance. She concluded that he might have fought with another animal, but couldn't be sure. As the dog got closer to them, it became more apparent that he needed medical assistance. She asked her older child to call her father and tell him that Razik, the dog, was badly injured and needed help. The girl obeyed and ran towards the garage to get her father. Irina knew she couldn't do much for the pup. The dog had long established that he wasn't to be touched without permission. Up until that point, all the physical contact the family had had with the dog was initiated by him. It was clear that Razik had a dark past and had gone through terrible experiences with certain people, and so he didn't trust easily. The only ones who could pet him were the little children of the village. Once Razik was close enough to touch, Irina watched as he sat down with difficulty and gazed up at her. He could barely hold himself up, and before Irina could blink, he collapsed to the ground. She screamed her husband's name just as he stepped out of the garage. He quickly assessed the situation, carefully lifted the poor injured dog from the floor, and took him to the garden shed. Irina ran ahead of him and cleared the table before spreading a towel on it. Her husband laid Razik on the table and began to check for broken bones. He wasn't a vet, but he had basic knowledge of animal care and knew he had to apply it quickly before the dog entered critical condition. Once he figured out that there was nothing broken apart from a sprained hind leg, he began to wipe the blood on the dog's fur. He realized that there were countless bite marks on the dog's body, and he asked Irina to disinfect them. As Irina got busy with her assignment, she teared up. She wondered how he had gotten to such bad shape. He often disappeared for days, but he always came back fine. Not this time, though. This was her first time seeing him in such a state, and her heart could barely handle it. She blinked away tears as she cleaned his wounds. The children watched as their parents worked on their friend. They too were crying bitter tears. Razik was their friend and they couldn't bear to see him suffer so much. They also felt guilty for letting him leave and not adopting him sooner. But he was a stray dog and they had believed that he preferred to be alone rather than in a house with people longing to touch him. After all, he had been averse to touch since the first time they'd seen him. Razik had walked into their village one day, seemingly appearing from nowhere. He was a scared little thing and didn't want to associate himself with anyone. Initially, people thought he was a missing dog, but there were no posters with his descriptions or ads in the newspaper. The worried villagers asked around other neighboring towns, but no one knew who he was. It was evident from his physical state that he wasn't eating much, but since he refused to associate with anyone, it was hard to feed him and get him the help he needed. Now and then, the villagers would leave food and water around him, and when they left and came back, they would find the food bowls empty. Gradually, the homeless dog began to leave his hiding spot. He would walk short distances, but when he encountered a human, he would run back to the abandoned truck he called home. Villagers thought it strange that he would come around, stay for a few weeks, and then come back again. Still, they never complained and helped him however they could. The dog, despite his rough appearance, was never aggressive. He kept to himself, and if anyone tried to talk to him or touch him, he would simply shrink away. One day, while the homeless dog went out to explore the village, he saw little children playing outside. He sat quietly and watched them play without a care in the world. It was then that he first met Irina's children. He liked all the kids, but he took special note of hers. The night was approaching when the group of children disbanded and went to their different homes. Irina's oldest child immediately noticed the dog following them as they went home. Her friends had spoken about him and how he had no owner and was lonely. Her friend wanted to play with him, but her mother said she couldn't in case he was aggressive. But Irina's child Katie didn't see any signs of aggression in the dog. She paused and turned to look at him. She thought that he must be hungry, so she took a piece of sandwich she still had in her pocket and threw it at him. He stared at it for a while before eating it all up. Katie threw another piece at him and watched as he ate it happily. She was afraid to come close at first, but as she fed him, she walked slowly towards him. Soon the sandwich finished, and when the dog looked up and saw how close she was to him for the first time, he wasn't spooked. Katie didn't want to leave, but she had to get home. She waved at the dog and took her sister's hand in hers. Together they walked home, unaware that their new friend was right behind them. After that night, the dog became a constant figure in Katie's life. Since he knew the way to her house, he would sit outside and wait until she came out. He would walk her and her sister to school and hang around until closing time. The bond between Irina's children and the dog grew stronger every day. They fed him every day with tasty treats and meals, and in turn he let them pet him once in a while. But one day the dog disappeared again, and this time for longer. The girls searched everywhere for him, but were reassured by another villager that that was the dog's way and that he would be back. The villager spoke the truth because a few weeks later the dog came back. One day, the children were playing outside, kicking a soccer ball, when suddenly they noticed the dog looking at them. Katie was among them. As soon as she saw him, she ran to him and started to pet him. She was excited and called the other kids over. They abandoned their game and rushed over to pet the sweet dog. That day, the children named him Razik. The bond between Katie, her sister, and Razik was a strong one, and that was why they both felt bad when they saw him so badly injured. Katie watched her father sew up the cuts on her friend's body and hoped he would be all right. Her father then applied disinfectants to the wounds to prevent infections before wrapping them up. He told the girls that the dog would be all right and told them to have their supper, but Katie barely ate as she was sick with worry for Razik. After dinner, she went into the shed with her blanket and spread it over her friend. She ran a hand through his fur wishing he would wake up that instant, but he didn't. He didn't wake up the next day either. Once morning came and Katie's father saw that the poor dog was still unconscious. He immediately took him to a vet outside their village. Katie tagged along because she was too worried for her friend to sit at home doing nothing. She rode in the back with Razik's head on her lap, praying with all her heart that her friend would be all right. Once they got to the vet's office, the doctor examined Razik after hearing that he hadn't been conscious for almost a full day. Katie's father had treated all the visible wounds right away and it didn't look like they were getting infected. However, they were still pretty frightening to look at. The doctor agreed that the poor dog must have had a scuffle with another animal, probably bigger and stronger. Then the vet told Katie's father that he would need to conduct an emergency surgery. Razik had suffered a head injury as well, so he needed to be treated immediately, otherwise he would not make it. Devastated by the news, Katie began to cry. Her father comforted her, telling her that all hope wasn't lost. Then, Razik was taken to the operating room for surgery while Katie and her dad waited outside. Even though he wasn't their dog in every way, the little girls still thought of him as theirs. They may not have officially adopted him, but he was a member of their family, and losing him would leave a large hole in their hearts. Soon, the doctor came out of the operating room with a smile on his face. He announced that the surgery was a success and that soon they would be able to see their dog. Katie was happy and began to cry again, but this time it was tears of joy. Later on, they were allowed to see Razik, but he was still unconscious, so Katie suggested they went to the mall to get some snacks for him to celebrate his recovery. It was going to be a pleasant surprise for the dog, and her father agreed. But when they came back with doggy treats and toys, they got a surprise of their own. Once they opened the door to the room Razik was in, they saw him sitting and wagging his tail. As he made eye contact with Katie, all the memories they had together rushed through his mind. When Razik first saw Katie and her sister, they were like beacons of light that took away the darkness that was his life. He had been through so much and knew that being closer to Katie was his reward. He was scared when he first woke up, but as soon as he saw Katie, he knew that he was in good hands. Never in his life did he think he would enjoy human company, but when he met the little girl, everything changed. He vowed then that he would never leave her side and would always protect her and her loved ones. Unbeknownst to them, this vow was exactly the reason why Razik had come home all battered and bruised, but the family was about to find out soon enough how far the dog was willing to go to keep his friends safe. The vet kept the dog in the clinic for a few days to be sure of his recovery before sending him home with Katie and her dad. The girls were happy to have their friend back, and so were the other kids. Even though they wanted to play with him, they restrained themselves so he could recover properly. It took some time, but eventually, Razik got better. He seemed to be more at ease around the children, but there was a strange air of distrust around him that no treat or cuddle seemed to be able to dispel. And 2 days later, Irina and her family found out exactly why their dog was being so guarded. As Katie and her younger sister walked home from school with their pup in tow one day, they were suddenly confronted by a sight that made their blood run cold. In front of them was a big wild wolf with its teeth bared and its hackles raised. The wolf snarled at the girls and Katie instantly stepped in front of her sister. She was ready to defend her against any threat, even the scariest one. But someone else was ready to defend her in turn. For the first time in a long time, Razik barked. The sound shocked Katie because he had never barked or growled near her before. She didn't have time to dwell on that discovery, though, because the wolf leapt into the air. A loud scream tore from her throat, but before the beast could cause any damage, Razik lunged forward and clamped his teeth on the wolf's neck. The wolf recoiled from the impact and the bite, but responded soon enough with a strong paw that sent the dog flying. By now, Katie and her little sister were in tears. Razik was a big dog, but the wolf was huge and there was no way their best friend would win this fight. As Razik whimpered in pain on the ground, the wolf turned its attention towards the children again. It growled loudly, baring its teeth and charged once again. Katie put her hands over her sister's eyes and shot her own. She didn't want to look death in the eyes. But the impact never came. Instead, another whimper followed. When she opened her eyes, Katy gasped in shock. Razik had found the strength to get up again and had slammed its body against the wolf, knocking it sideways and pushing it away from the two sisters. But the wolf was already getting up again. The beast snarled and howled, crouching on its forelegs. It was about to jump when Razik barked loudly and charged headfirst again. Katy was barely aware of the screaming voices behind her back. Some neighbors had heard her yell and were now running towards her and her sister, determined to protect them from harm. As the neighbors approached, Katy turned around just in time to see the wolf clamp its teeth down on Razik's side. The pup whimpered in pain, but as soon as the wolf saw the humans running towards it, it fled the scene. Katy immediately ran to Razik. Some of her neighbors ran after the wolf, determined to scare it away for good, while others helped her rush the dog back to the vet clinic. When the vet checked the pup, he explained that his current injuries were consistent with the ones he'd reported the last time, and concluded that Razik must have already fought the wolf once, that he'd left the village to protect it from harm and had come back to finish the job. As the doctor operated on him once again, Katy told the story of her rescue to anyone who would listen. She sobbed all the while, alternating wails and prayers. The hero dog had fought hard to protect her and her sister, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. Thankfully, the doctor was able to patch Razik up once again. The poor dog would have to refrain from running for a while, but would get better soon enough. The whole village rejoiced at the news, but no one was happier than Irina and her husband, who decided to formally adopt the dog. Razik had saved the day with his bravery and courage, and they would be eternally grateful to him for saving their daughters. As for the dog, he was ecstatic to finally have a home and a family of his own. He had never expected to find love after what he'd gone through in the past, but he was glad to have Katy and her family in her life. And for that love, he would thank them day after day. What a beautiful example of gratitude. Would you feed a homeless dog for months? Have you ever met a hero dog? Tell us in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.